My name is Marcus Reeves. I was born in a little town outside Houston, Texas. And ever since I was 6 years old, I knew I wanted to fly. I remember the first time my dad took me to the airport, not to board a plane, just to watch them take off and land. I stood by the window, eyes wide, heart pounding, watching those giant machines lift off like they were weightless. One day, that'll be me, I whispered. I spent my whole life chasing that dream. I read every book. I saved every dollar. I worked 2 jobs just to pay for flight school. I earned my private pilot's license, then my commercial license. And after years of sacrifice, I finally landed my dream job with Lone Star Regional Airlines, a small Texas-based company flying passengers between cities like Dallas, Austin, and Houston. The day I got my wings, I called my mama. She cried on the phone for 10 minutes straight before she could even say a word. "I'm so proud of you, baby," she finally whispered, climbed the stairs to the cockpit, and introduced myself to the captain, Rick Collins. White man, mid-50s, over 30 years with the company. He barely looked at me when I stuck out my hand. "Morning, sir. Marcus Reeves, first officer." He glanced at my badge, then back at me. "You sure you're in the right place, kid?" I forced a smile. "Yes, sir." "Right place." He shrugged and turned back to his pre-flight checks without another word. We boarded the passengers. I could hear them chatting, laughing as they took their seats, and then I heard it. "Oh, no, 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 no." A woman's voice, loud, sharp. I peeked out of the cockpit to see a middle-aged white woman standing in the aisle, pointing right at me. "Is he flying this plane?" she shouted. The entire cabin went quiet. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. I felt my stomach drop. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" The flight attendant asked, trying to keep calm. The woman crossed her arms. "I don't feel safe flying with him in the cockpit." The word "him" hung in the air like poison. I felt my face flush, but I didn't move. "Ma'am, First Officer Reeves is fully certified." The flight attendant tried to explain. "I don't care. I want another pilot, or I'm not getting on this plane." My throat tightened. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I turned back to Rick, expecting him to shut it down, expecting him to defend me, but he just sat there, silent, like it wasn't his problem. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "We can ask her to step off if you'd like, Marcus." "If I'd like?" I whispered, barely believing what I was hearing. He nodded, still not looking me in the eye. I knew what he was really saying. He wanted me to be the one to back down. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the cockpit, and stood in the aisle. "Ma'am, you have 2 choices," I said quietly. "You can stay on this flight, or you can wait for the next one." She stared me down, lips pressed tight. "I'll wait." She grabbed her bag and stormed off the plane, leaving the rest of the passengers sitting in awkward silence. I turned back to the cockpit, my hands shaking. Rick finally looked up. "You sure you're ready for this job, kid?" I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew the answer. I wasn't just flying a plane that day. I was flying straight into a storm I hadn't. I thought it would stop after that first flight. I thought once I proved I could do the job, people would settle down. But I was wrong. It only got worse. The next few weeks felt like walking through invisible fire. Little things at first. Tiny cuts that didn't bleed right away. But you felt them later when you were alone. Watch out for the rookie. Wonder how long he'll last. Hope he knows which buttons to push up there. They never said it to my face, but I heard the whispers every time I walked through the crew lounge. I tried to shake it off. I kept showing up early, kept doing the work, kept checking every box twice. But no matter how hard I tried, I could feel the distance growing. One afternoon, after landing in San Antonio, I was filling out the post-flight paperwork when Rick leaned back in his seat. "Word of advice, kid," he muttered without looking up. I paused, pen hovering over the clipboard. "What's that, sir?" I asked. He finally turned, his expression colder than usual. "Don't get too comfortable." I blinked, confused. "Sir?" He leaned in just a little. "You know how many pilots like you make it in this company? 1, 2, maybe. And they don't stick around long." I felt my throat tighten again, but I didn't respond. I just finished the paperwork, handed it in, and walked out without another word. That night, I called my mama. I hadn't told her much about what had been happening, but I couldn't keep it in anymore. She listened quietly while I unloaded everything. The passenger on my first flight, the whispers, the way Rick talked to me like I didn't deserve the uniform I'd worked so hard for. When I finished, she sighed. "Baby, you didn't come this far to let them tell you who you are." "But what if they already decided, Ma?" "Then you show up anyway. And what if they shut me down?" "Then you stand back up, again and again, until they can't ignore you." I sat there in my little apartment, staring at the wall, trying to believe her. But the weight was getting heavier every day. The next morning, I showed up early, like always. When I checked the schedule, I noticed my name wasn't listed for the rest of the week. I walked up to the scheduling desk. "Excuse me, I think there's a mistake. I'm not showing any flights this week." The woman behind the desk checked her clipboard, then gave me a tight smile. "You've been reassigned to the reserve pool." My stomach dropped. "Reserve? I'm not on probation. I haven't missed a single flight." She shrugged. "Take it up with management." I walked straight to the chief pilot's office. Captain Harrow, the man who ran the schedules, the promotions, the careers. He didn't even look up when I walked in. "Reeves, sit down." I sat. "You're on reserve starting today," he said flatly. "Why?" I asked. He leaned back, crossing his arms. "Passenger feedback. Some crew reports. Concerns about your readiness." "I've passed every check. I've never been late. I've never had a single safety issue." He nodded slowly. "That's not the point, son." "Then what is the point, sir?" He paused, then leaned forward. "We have a culture here, Reeves. You can't force your way into it. You either fit or you don't." There it was, plain as day. No code, no whisper, just a quiet threat wrapped in company policy. I stood up, fists shaking at my sides. I earned this uniform, and I'm not going anywhere. He smirked like he'd heard it all before. We'll see. I walked out of that office knowing something I hadn't wanted to admit before. They didn't care how good I was. They didn't care how hard I worked. They had already decided who I was, and it wasn't one of them. Reserve duty was designed to break you. They didn't have to fire you. They just had to make you wait. I showed up every morning in full uniform, sat in the break room, sat by the phone, waiting for a call that never came. No hours in the air meant no progress. No progress meant no future. And that's exactly what they wanted. A week passed, then two, and just when I started to think they'd buried me for good, the phone finally rang. Reeves, you're on flight 714 to El Paso tomorrow. Report at 0600. I nearly dropped the phone. I grabbed my uniform, polished my shoes, checked. The morning felt different. Something tight in the air, like a storm waiting to hit. I met Captain Rick Collins at the gate again. Same cold stare, same silent treatment. But I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to fly. We boarded. Passengers settled in. No one said anything this time. No one stormed off. I thought, maybe, just maybe, things were turning. The flight was smooth, clear skies, perfect landing. We taxied to the gate, and I felt a weight lift off my chest. Good flight, I said quietly as we powered down. Rick didn't answer. The next day, I got called back to Captain Harrow's office. I walked in, ready for anything. Or so I thought. Harrow didn't even let me sit down this time. We've received a formal passenger complaint about you, Reeves. My heart stopped. Sir, what kind of complaint? He flipped through a file on his desk. Passenger claims you were unprofessional, distracted, and appeared unfit to fly safely. I stood there in shock. That's a lie. Passenger says you left the cockpit mid-flight without permission, spent excessive time in the galley, and created a hostile environment. That never happened, I snapped, feeling my voice rise. Harrow leaned back, pretending to think it over. We'll investigate, of course, but until then, you're grounded indefinitely. Grounded? Sir, That's all, Reeves. At least let me see the report. He closed the file and looked up, his voice dropping to a whisper. I think it's time you start considering your options. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. I'm not quitting. He smirked. They never do. Not at first. I turned, walked out, and slammed the door behind me. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. The phone ringing non-stop. Friends, family, people asking what happened. I didn't answer any of them. I knew what this was. They had set me up. And this time they weren't just trying to push me out quietly. They were trying to ruin my name for good. I didn't step foot in a cockpit for the next 2 months. They didn't have to fire me. Putting me on indefinite review was the same thing. My paychecks stopped coming. My phone stopped ringing. My so-called friends at the airline stopped replying to my messages. And every day I sat at home, felt like another mile between me and the sky. One afternoon, I drove to the airport anyway. I needed to see it for myself. I needed to remember why I started. I parked near the runway, just like my dad used to do with me when I was a kid. I watched plane after plane take off, watched pilots in uniform walk by, smiling, living the life I had worked so hard to build. I felt like I was suffocating. I pulled out my phone and called Rick Collins, the one man who knew the complaint was a lie. He picked up after the second ring. "Marcus? You know I didn't leave the cockpit, Rick." Silence. "You and I both know that woman made it up." "It's not my fight, kid," he finally muttered. "Not your fight? You stood right next to me when it didn't happen. Look, just let it go, Marcus. Take the settlement. Walk away." "So that's it? You're gonna let them burn me for something I didn't do?" "They've made up their minds. You won't change it." I gripped the phone tighter, feeling my chest burn. "Thanks for nothing," I whispered and hung up. Later that week, I got an official letter from Lone Star Regional's legal department. "As a gesture of goodwill, the company is prepared to offer you a severance package upon your voluntary resignation." Translation: take the money and disappear quietly. I crumpled the letter and threw it across the room. A few days later, I ran into Angela, a gate agent I'd known since my first week on the job. She stopped me as I was leaving a grocery store. "Marcus, I heard what they're doing to you. I'm so sorry." I swallowed hard, trying not to show how close I was to breaking. "You're the first person to say that to my face." She glanced around, lowering her voice. "You're not the first, you know." "What do you mean?" I asked. She leaned in. "There was another pilot, Andre Miller. A few years ago, same thing happened to him. Different excuse, same outcome." My heart sank. "What happened to him?" "He took the settlement. Vanished." I stood there in the parking lot, shaking my head. "Not this time. Marcus, they don't lose these fights." I met her eyes, steady and sure. Maybe they've just never fought me. A week later, I got a text from Angela. "They're coming after me too." I called her right away. "What do you mean?" "They pulled me into the manager's office, said I was spreading negativity in the workplace because I spoke to you." "Are you serious?" "They told me to keep quiet or they'd put me on probation." I felt my stomach twist. "I'm so sorry, Angela." "Don't be," she whispered. "I just wanted you to know. They're trying to isolate you." And it was working. I tried to keep busy, but the silence was louder than any jet engine I'd ever heard. One night, I found myself scrolling through pilot forums, looking for anyone who might have gone through the same thing. That's when I found a thread titled "Lone Star Regional, the Ones Who Vanish." It was full of comments from former employees, some anonymous, some not. I kept scrolling until I saw his name. Andre Miller, The pilot Angela had mentioned. He had posted once, almost a year ago. Don't let them push you out in the dark. Speak up before they erase you. My hands started shaking. I clicked on his profile. No contact info. No follow-up posts. Nothing. Like he'd disappeared. Just like they wanted me to. The next day, I showed up at Lone Star's corporate office. No appointment. No invitation. I walked straight to the front desk. I'm here to speak with Captain Harrow. The receptionist didn't even flinch. I'm sorry, sir, but you're no longer authorized to be here without an appointment. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Tell him Marcus Reeves stopped by. Tell him I'm not signing anything. She nodded, typing something into her computer. I turned and walked out. That night, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. Marcus Reeves? A man's voice asked. Who's this? Name's Andre. Andre Miller. I felt my chest tighten. I've been looking for you. I know. I saw your posts. I leaned against the kitchen counter, gripping the phone. They tried to erase me too. Why'd you go quiet? He sighed on the other end of the line. Because they buried me, took my license, blacklisted me in every airline I applied to. Why are you calling me now? Because you're the first one who didn't walk away. What can I do? His voice dropped low. You take it public. You tell everyone what they're doing. And this time, you don't let them control the story. I swallowed hard. You'd go public with me? He paused. I already lost everything. What else can they take? I hung up the phone and stood in the middle of my apartment, staring at my reflection in the window. I didn't feel like a pilot anymore. I didn't feel like I belonged in that uniform. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going down quietly. I knew once I went public, there was no turning back. No way to unring the bell. No way to control what would happen next. But I'd already lost everything. We met the next day at a small cafe near the airport. I laid it all out. The whispers, the fake complaint, the settlement offer, and most importantly, Andre Miller. Camille took notes the whole time, eyes locked on mine. Do you have anything in writing? She asked. I kept every letter, every email. I even recorded some of the voicemails. She leaned back, smiling just a little. Marcus, you're sitting on a powder keg. If I light it, what happens next? She paused. It'll come for you harder than ever. But you might just wake up this whole industry. We published the story 2 days later. Grounded While Black. The untold story of Lone Star Regional Airlines. Camille didn't hold back. She named the company. She named Harrow. She named Rick Collins. She included quotes from Andre Miller. She posted screenshots of the complaint letters I'd kept. And she ended the story with a single question. How many more pilots have they buried in silence? By noon, the story went viral. People started using the hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack. I couldn't open my phone without seeing my face, my story, my name everywhere. Black pilot silenced after false safety accusations. Lone Star Regional under fire for racial bias. Marcus Reeves speaks out. Who's next? My phone exploded with messages. We see you, Marcus. Don't back down. We're flying with you. But the other side came too. He's just bitter. He couldn't cut it. Stop making everything about race. He's a threat to passenger safety. It felt like standing in the middle of a hurricane. I sat on my couch, scrolling through it all, my head spinning. And then I got a text from Andre. They're going to come hard now. You ready? I stared at the screen, my hands shaking, but I knew what I had to say. I was born ready. The company didn't stay quiet for long. Lone Star Regional Airlines held their own press conference 2 days after Camille's story broke. I sat in my apartment, watching them on live TV. The company's legal team stood stiff behind a podium, reading carefully worded statements. We take all employee concerns seriously. We strongly deny any claims of racial bias. Mr. Reeves was removed from duty following a credible passenger safety complaint. I felt my jaw clench tighter with every word. Mr. Reeves is engaging in a media campaign to damage the reputation of our airline and mislead the public. I stood up, pacing the room. They're calling me a liar, I whispered to myself. The spokesperson continued. We have no further comment at this time, but will pursue all legal options to defend the integrity of our company. I could already see what was coming next. Sure enough, that evening, I received an official cease and desist letter from Lone Star's legal team. Mr. Reeves, you are hereby ordered to cease all public defamatory statements against Lone Star Regional Airlines or face legal action. I read it twice, then a third time. It wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war. I called Camille and Aisha right away. They're trying to shut me down again. Let them try, Aisha snapped. This changes nothing. But they're framing me as the problem, Camille cut in. Then it's time to take this beyond Texas. How? I asked. We take it national. Major outlets, major networks. The more eyes on this, the harder it is for them to spin it. I swallowed hard. Let's do it. We scheduled an interview with a national morning show. I sat in a chair under bright studio lights. Mike clicked to my jacket. The host smiled politely, but I could tell they wanted me to slip, to say something angry, something reckless. I kept my voice steady. This isn't just about me. This is about every qualified black pilot who never even got the chance to take off. What do you say to those who claim you're playing the race card? The host asked. I leaned forward, looking right into the camera. I say if you've never had to prove yourself twice as hard just to get half the respect, you don't know what this card looks like. The studio went silent for a moment. This isn't a card. This is my life. And I'm done letting them control the narrative. By the next day, the hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack trended nationwide. Pilots I'd never even met started speaking out. Same thing happened to me, in 2018. I left the industry because of this. We're with you, Marcus. I watched it all unfold from my living room, heart pounding. They tried to make me the only one, but I wasn't alone anymore. I never had been. It was Camille who said it first. If you stop here, they'll spin this forever. You need to take them to court. Aisha nodded across the table, sliding a stack of papers toward me. You've got more than a story now, Marcus. You've got a case. I stared at the legal paperwork in front of me. My hands trembled as I picked up the pen. Let's do it, I whispered. And just like that, it was official. Marcus Reeves versus Lone Star Regional Airlines. News of the lawsuit spread fast. Black pilot files landmark discrimination lawsuit against airline. Flying while black, case moves to court. Industry on watch as Lone Star faces legal battle. The airline doubled down in response. They filed a countersuit, claiming I was damaging their reputation and spreading false information. Defamation, loss of business, emotional distress for staff, their legal team claimed in the headlines. It was textbook intimidation, but the community didn't back down. 2 weeks before the hearing, Camille organized a rally at the airport. Hundreds showed up, not just black pilots, but flight attendants, mechanics, ground crews, people of every color who had faced the same invisible walls. They held signs that read, "Pilots, not tokens. We belong in the sky. Hashtag flying while black is real." I stood in front of the crowd, microphone shaking in my hand. They told me I didn't belong in that cockpit, I began. They told me to walk away quietly. The crowd listened, leaning in. But here's the truth. We built these skies too. The crowd roared. And it's time the world hears our story. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the hearing. The airline showed up with a wall of lawyers, corporate executives sitting stiff behind them. But I wasn't alone either. Aisha stood beside me. Camille sat in the front row with her camera crew. Andre Miller was there too, sitting tall and proud. So was Angela, even though she knew she was risking her job just by being seen in that room. "We're with you, Marcus," she whispered as I walked to the stand. I took a deep breath and looked out at the sea of faces. I thought about my father taking me to the airport window when I was 6. I thought about the woman who walked off my first flight, about Rick Collins looking the other way, about Harrow calling me a bad fit. And I knew this wasn't just my fight anymore. 3 days. That's how long the court battled back and forth. Lone Star's lawyers threw everything at us. Mr. Reeves was emotional. He misunderstood standard safety protocols. This has nothing to do with race. They called Rick Collins to testify. He sat there, looking me dead in the eye, and said, "I never saw anything inappropriate. I never heard any racial comments." I felt my stomach turn. I could see it in his face. He knew he was lying. Aisha stood up calmly when it was her turn. "Captain Collins, Are you aware that Mr. Reeves kept copies of his cockpit schedules, showing the shifts you personally removed him from, without explanation? Rick froze. Are you aware Mr. Reeves has voicemails from coworkers confirming they heard racially charged comments from flight crews describing him as a diversity hire? Rick swallowed hard, but he didn't answer. Aisha didn't need him to. The courtroom knew. I took the stand one last time before the jury left to deliberate. I didn't use notes. I didn't rehearse. I just spoke. I worked my whole life to get here. Not for fame, not for headlines, just to fly. And I would have been fine if they'd told me I wasn't good enough based on my skill. But they didn't. They decided I didn't belong before I ever touched the controls. I looked right at the jury. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who gets told to sit down before they ever get the chance to stand up. And I'm telling you now, we belong here. The room was silent as I stepped down. The jury took 2 days to reach a decision. When they returned, I couldn't breathe. I gripped the edge of the table so tight my knuckles turned white. The foreperson stood and read the verdict. In the case of Marcus Reeves versus Lone Star Regional Airlines, we find in favor of the plaintiff. I felt my body collapse back into the chair. Rico grabbed me from behind, pulling me into a hug. Angela started crying. Andre pounded his fist on the bench with a proud grin. The judge awarded $2.4 million in damages, not just for me, but as a message. This court recognizes the harm caused by systemic discrimination and retaliatory practices. Lone Star's legal team didn't even look in my direction as they packed up and left. They knew they had lost. After the ruling, Lone Star tried to offer me a confidential settlement with a non-disclosure agreement attached. Aisha slid the offer across the table. This would mean you can't talk about the case publicly ever again, she explained. I didn't even need to read it. No deal, I whispered, because I knew my voice was worth more than their money. And the world still needed to hear what happened. Winning felt heavy, not like the movies, not like some perfect ending. It didn't bring my job back. It didn't erase the lies they told about me. It didn't take away the months I'd spent wondering if I even belonged in that cockpit. But it proved one thing. We weren't crazy. We weren't making it up. And we weren't alone. In the months that followed, other pilots started coming forward. One by one, they told their stories on podcasts, in interviews, in courtrooms. The walls they built around us started to crack. Airlines across the country announced diversity investigations. Flight schools reached out asking how they could support Black pilots. I knew it wasn't perfect. I knew it wasn't over. But it was a start. One afternoon, I stood in front of a small classroom on the south side of Houston. I was no longer wearing my airline uniform. I wore a simple instructor's badge. On the board behind me, I had written, "The sky is ours too." A dozen young faces stared back at me. Kids who looked just like I did. When I first dreamed of flying. I cleared my throat and smiled. My name is Marcus Reeves, I began. And today, we're going to talk about how to fly. The kids leaned in, eyes wide. But before we talk about engines and wings, I want you to hear me when I say this. I paused, making sure every single one of them heard me loud and clear. You don't have to ask for permission to belong up there. They're gonna tell you no. They're gonna tell you you're not good enough. But I'm standing here to tell you, you are. You always has been. And the sky is yours too. I stepped down from the podium as the kids started clapping. Some stood on their chairs, cheering like they'd already won something they didn't even know they were chasing yet. And in that moment, I knew the fight wasn't just mine anymore. It never was. We had cracked the ceiling. We had taken one small step through the clouds. And we were never going back.